First up is a film called The Son, and it stars Hugh Jackman, Laura Dern, Anthony Hopkins, and Vanessa Kirby. And if you are someone who follows capital A acting films, you might be asking yourself, why didn't I hear about this film earlier in the award season? Because for most people, for most films, award season ends at the end of the calendar year because that's when Oscar qualifying ends. Well, this movie technically came out in November of 2022. It is getting a slightly wider release now in January, and it wanted to go for the awards, but I think the fact that you have not heard a lot about it speaks volumes to the quality and subject matter of the film and just the whole package put together. The writer-director is Florian Zeller, and it's funny because his previous film was called The Father. So if his next film is called The Holy Ghost, I will laugh very much because I have to give somebody credit for setting up a joke of that magnitude. I thought The Father was really actually good. It's Anthony Hopkins is also in that one, and I think that one relies a lot on, one, the strength of his performance, but two, the subject matter. It's about him dealing with memory loss and either dementia or Alzheimer's. I can't remember which, but not being able to recognize his kids, and it's very sad. I cried a lot during it, but I did not shed a single tear during The Son. I think clearly this gentleman is dealing with, this gentleman being Florian, is dealing with daddy issues and is trying to work them out through his films. And, therapy might be cheaper than making a film, but here we are. We all have our different methods of coping. So the story is basically Hugh Jackman has a teenage son. He now has a new wife and a new child, and he's dealing with sort of balancing of the mixed families. Laura Dern plays his ex-wife. Anthony Hopkins plays his father. And I think what they're trying to get at is, him not wanting to become his father or make the mistakes his father made, be present, all these things. The problem is this. So the son is dealing with the divorce of his parents in not the healthiest of ways. And I think the way that this film treats mental illness, and I know I took a long time to get to the point of my beef with it, but I felt like the way that this film treats mental illness was borderline dangerous. And I'm obviously not a mental health professional, but the characters in it seem to be doing everything that I would guess that mental health professionals would be like, that's probably not how you deal with someone in these scenarios. But the problem is, I feel like it's almost the characters are being rewarded for doing those things in certain ways. And I'm trying to dance around some of the plot twists and things like that. But, I know what it's going for, but I think the way that it executes it is, again, borderline. If you are not aware of anything involving, mental health or folks at risk, it might seem like, oh, this is a templated way to do this or interact with those folks. And I just don't feel like the, emotional payoff or all the things, it did not sit well with me. I'm having trouble articulating it again because I don't want to spoil it, but also I just don't think it was a well presented story in that sense. And I feel so bad when a film relies on a younger actor and they just don't have the chops to carry the movie. And the young gentleman who plays the son in this, or I guess one of the sons, because there's multi-generational stories here, but he's not really convey. And I could be wrong here. He could be giving a very accurate portrayal of somebody who is in need of help, but it doesn't read well on screen, is what I will say. And because this is a movie and not a documentary and not any of those things, it is tough to watch. And I almost feel like guilting is not the right word, but it's almost emotional blackmail or extortion in being like, hey, are you not upset by the subject matter? Because the subject matter is heavy versus, hey, these performances and these well-rounded characters are really evoking something out of you. I don't love when films do. I actively dislike when films do that. And there's maybe a world in which this could have been salvaged, but I just based on the script and how it was, I can't imagine, short of replacing the younger actor, a better cast necessarily that you could put this in the hands of, or at least like this cast was perfectly capable of making something good out of this. So that leads me to believe it is the material, it is the directing, it's all these things, and not that they don't play a part in all of that. But anyway, this is a very long-winded way of saying this is a hard pass for me, and I cannot actively recommend it to anyone because of the way I feel about how it's treating mental illness and the mental health services and warning signs and red flags and all these things. And I wish that, if we were in a place as a society that people had a better literacy about these things, then maybe this movie would feel less scary almost in that sense. And not that it was trying to be scary for that, Anyway, I cannot really in good conscience recommend this to anyone, and so I am going to give it a 2.2 out of 5. Even with the capital A acting moments, just so much of it was draining and not in a good or intentional way, and they could not, there's no way those could salvage the movie. So The Son is going to be a skip. The other thing I have this week could potentially be considered the polar opposite of The Son, but such is timing. It's Bling Empire New York, which is a new series on Netflix, and it's following, it's a sort of spin-off of Bling Empire, which is a show that I truly adore, which centers around, it's basically like a Housewives or any of these reality shows, or Kardashians, but not about a direct family, but it's centering on a purely Asian American cast, which I thought was great. The first version is set in Los Angeles. This is a spin-off in New York. We're following Dorothy Wong, who has appeared in some of the Bling Empire LA-based ones. And I will say I'm absolutely morbidly fascinated by this version of it. New York is certainly a different scene. There is a lot of glitz and glamour, but I feel like with this one, with Bling Empire regular edition, I did feel like some of these characters either actually had friendships or had more in common or a common background or enjoyed each other's company more. This feels more like a Housewives, like a Bravo Housewives, where a bunch of people have just been cast together. And yes, their social circles might overlap a little bit, but they were all just cast because they are effectively Asian or involved with somebody Asian or whatever it is. And so that doesn't mean it's bad, but I don't think there's as much of an emotional through line, which can make it a little harder to watch these shows because there's not as much to offset, and you can be like, oh, okay, but no, they're trying to do something nice for their friend in this one, versus this where it's just like, oh, they're all jerks to each other and they're spending ridiculous amounts of money. Cool. I have not finished it yet, but that is, I'm decent way in, and that is where I'm currently at with it. Again, I think that is one of the challenges with when you capture a little bit of lightning in a bottle and then you try to repeat it out. And also, there is no Anna Shay in this, which is a travesty. You need a matronly character to hold it together, who's had just it's so much work done and has so much money. Always love that as an anchor for one of these series, but you also want an emotional core, and this one is a little bit more fish in an aquarium versus actually watching a social circle. But, there's nothing wrong with fish in an aquarium. I just want to warn people. But Bling Empire New York is now out on Netflix.